Hey folks, this is CuppaJoey, your favourite kind of trans fat, and if you've clicked on this video then it probably won't surprise you to know that I am currently obsessed with Encanto. From seeing it 6 times in multiple different languages, collecting the Funkos the second they were available in the UK, and live streaming my sticker collection, Encanto is something that I just haven't been able to get out of my head ever since I first heard We Don't Talk About Bruno. I will admit that at first I thought that Encanto was just going to be another cash grab like Raya or Luca, but no, this is a real passion project. Jared Bush, who was also the screenwriter for Moana and Zootropolis, was absolutely passionate about making sure that the film was accurate to Colombian culture, and it definitely shows. They travelled to the city of Barichara and worked closely with their cultural consultant Alejandra Espinosa to make sure that the portrayal was both respectful and accurate. They also worked with Liliana Valencia, who was a consultant on Afro-Latino culture, and they actually named this background character Lily due to her contributions on making the film accurately representative of the culture it's meant to represent. So, as somebody who loves Disney and has a passion for language, communication and the cultures around language, finding out all the little details where Colombian and Latino history shine through was so exciting and fun, I knew I had to make a video about it. And just in case you haven't figured it out yet, this episode is going to be filled with spoilers for Encanto, so if you haven't seen it yet, you might want to give this video a miss and then come back after you've seen it. So, without any further ado, here are some small cultural details in Disney's Encanto that you might have missed or might have made your day. Right at the beginning of the film, during one of the cutest scenes where Mirabel gives Antonio the stuffed toy jaguar she made, she points towards the gift with her lips, which is a part of Latino culture with a deep history. When Colombia was invaded by the colonizers, Colombians often couldn't talk in front of their captors for fear of what would happen to them if they did. So because they couldn't talk, they communicated with each other via facial expressions and hand signals, which has continued into Colombian culture today. During the cultural study in Barichara, Espinosa said that the local villagers thought she was strange for being so intent on filming every single small movement. But that's because such movements are so important in Colombian culture that it was vital to capture them for the film. In a similar fashion, Camillo's finger snap is something a lot of Latino teenage boys do when they think that something is cool. Many people felt so seen just by these two small movements. Even the way Mirabel moves her hands a lot while talking is a nod not only to how expressive Colombian folk are with their hands, but also references that in Colombian culture it's actually rude to keep your hands in your pockets while you talk to someone. So when we see Mirabel expressing herself with her hands like this, that was all thanks to Alejandra Espinosa making sure that these movements were captured as a reference for Encanto. Okay, so if you're as deep into the Encanto fandom as I am, then you've probably come across these kinds of compilations. Again, these noises have a very similar point of origin as Mirabel's lip pointing, which is pretty fitting for a film with a strong theme of diaspora. As the local people couldn't talk in front of their captors, they relied on gestures, facial expressions, and small high-pitched noises. So this sound could mean, oh no, such as when Dolores finds out that Mirabel sought out Bruno's prophecy, but just like with spoken words, other forms of communication can change meaning over time. One Colombian fan of Encanto said that they read Dolores' squeak as meaning, I don't know and I don't mind. This means that at the end of the song La Familia Madrigal, when the kids insist on asking about Mirabel's gift and Dolores replies with, Mirabel didn't get one. Squeak. She's actually saying, Mirabel didn't get a gift, but I don't mind, it doesn't matter. This small tidbit I thought was really neat. Ah, fudge. Fiddlesticks. Oh shoot. These are all words that we use when we want to say. A lot of polite exclamations are based on the word that they're supposed to replace. Fudge flipping are meant to replace the F words, while sugar and shoot are meant to replace a word I feel like I should be able to say on YouTube. Anyway, when Agustin says miércoles,
time to eat.
Miércoles.
which just means Wednesday in Spanish, this is exactly what he's doing. Mierda is Spanish for shit. But you know, this is a Disney film, so they can't be effing and jeffing left and right.
I'm losing my What? Mirabelle and I were having this little talk about me too much, so I try not to so much.
And I personally think Uncle Stin wouldn't swear in front of his kids anyway. Miércoles is a pretty common replacement for mierda, and a lot of Spanish speakers actually said that that little miércoles reminded them of their own older, politer family members, which I just found really adorable. This is such a tiny detail, but it truly shows the level of work that went into every single pixel of Encanto. The flowers that are embroidered on Isabella's dress, as well as the flowers that are carved into her door, are Cattleyas trianae orchids, which are also known as mayflowers or May lilies. The reason that this is so cool is that those flowers are the national flowers of Colombia. Just like I said, I really feel like it's the little details about this film that make it so enchanting. When you look at Casita as a building, there are actually two parts of Colombian culture and history that really come together in Casita's architecture. So, first of all, there is the use of guadua bamboo throughout Casita, which is used as a building material in a lot of Colombian architecture, including in the village of Barichara. Similarly, here's a photo of the cultural consultant Alejandra Espinosa in front of the door that inspired the front door of Casita herself. The physical architecture of Casita isn't the only important thing about her though. The people that help rebuild her after the collapse also play a vital role. Professor Daniel Vasquez Vega noticed that this scene where the townsfolk help the Madrigals rebuild Casita is very similar to this photo by the Colombian photographer Jesus Abad. This photograph shows the strong sense of community in Colombian towns and how they would help each other rebuild after invasions or attacks. I definitely recommend looking into the work of Jesus Abad, as it's really eye-opening to the grim history behind the community spirit in many Colombian and Latin American villages. This one I have to thank my wife Annalise for pointing out to me, because as a Brazilian she noticed this small detail right away, as it's a part of Brazilian culture too. In Bruno's secret room behind the walls, he has a broom propped up just against the door. In Latin American culture, a broom propped up against the door is a way of warding off evil spirits or unwanted guests. Given that he doesn't really want Mirabelle poking around back there, it makes sense that it would be right up after she discovered Bruno. I think the fact that it's also used to ward off evil spirits and negative energy is also really interesting. Bruno shows a history of being superstitious, so it's not surprising that he would put up a broom against the door, especially when we also see his knock 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 on wood and him holding his breath while crossing his fingers. While knock on wood seems to be throughout Europe and the Americas, being superstitious is still very common in Latin American culture, so seeing Bruno with these superstitions is unsurprising. Although you would have thought Mirabelle would have got the hint to leave. While a lot of people may have described Bruno as wearing a poncho, he's actually wearing a ruana. A ruana is a traditional outer garment made of a thick wool that comes from the Quechua word ruana, which means textile. It is a traditional indigenous article of clothing popular in the Colombian Andes. Not only do we see Bruno wear the traditional ruana, but Camilo does too, just in a different colour. It doesn't just stop with the ruana though. Felix is seen wearing a guayabera, a traditional summer shirt from the Yucatan. The guayabera is distinguished by a few details, namely 2 pockets on the chest, 2 vertical pleats down the front, and 3 vertical pleats down the back. They're in the bright, warm colours that we see Pepper's side of the family wearing, adding the little personal Felix touch to his outfit. And this guy with the broken wrist, the one that just flops it in front of Julieta so she can see it's broken. Seriously, that must have hurt so much. This dude is a straight up badass. Anyway, he's wearing a sombrero vuelteado, which is an item of clothing that is now seen as a national symbol of Colombia. The sombrero vuelteado predates the Spanish colonization of Latin America. The hat was originally made by the indigenous Zenu people who lived near the Senu River between Cordoba and Sucre. It was used not only as a way to protect themselves from the sun while harvesting corn, but it was also seen as a symbol of hierarchy depending on the amount of strips of caña flecha, which is a tall sugarcane-like grass which is dried and then dyed with berries before it is woven by artisans into these beautiful pieces of clothing. So even a small side character without any lines can show a rich cultural history just by wearing a hat. The beautiful river at the end of the film where Abuela Alma and Mirabel are having their moment of reconciliation and Bruno tries to fix everything that's already been fixed, that river was actually based off of a real river in Colombia. The Caño Cristales, also known as the Crystal Channel in English, is a tributary of the Guayabero River in central Colombia. As you can see from the photos on screen, this river is utterly mesmerizing. It's one of the beautiful natural wonders that just leaves me breathless. Given how absolutely visually stunning the mariposa scene was in Encanto, it feels truly magical that something this stunning could actually exist. So, while we have the beauty and the architecture of Casita and the traditional clothing, Encanto also celebrates the natural beauty that Colombia has to offer. This is something that's definitely a blink and you'll miss it scene, but it's still another small note that I think is really neat. When Bruno is showing off his free entertainment, the football scene he places over the rats is actually a reference to the 1990 game between West Germany and Colombia. Much like Maradona's Hand of God being an iconic moment in Argentina, or Peter Crouch doing the robot being the highlight of the entirety of England's football career, the Gol de Rincón is a historical moment in Colombian football. The 1990 World Cup in Italy was the first time in 28 years that Colombia had qualified for the World Cup, and were up against West Germany, who even in the late 80s and early 90s were a footballing powerhouse, having beaten Yugoslavia and the UAE in their opening matches. So Colombia had one heck of a challenge in store. Colombia was 1-0 down, and the loss was in sight, right up until Freddy Rincon scored an equalising goal at the last minute. You can just hear the excitement in the announcer's voice. I love it. So, when Bruno shows the different forms of entertainment he has, including sports, you can tell by the uniforms that this is the West Germany vs Colombia match from 1990, one that's still remembered very fondly in Colombia. And before you say, but how did Bruno know about this match? He can see the future, he's been in the walls for years, you think he's not going to catch up on some future football matches? I know I would. Why was this all so important? Now, in the past, Disney hasn't really been the best with representation. It's been bad. Really bad. Whether it's the fact that the fruits Baloo sings about in The Bare Necessities are all ones found in North America, not India, the fetishization of darker-skinned women, or the flat-out overt racist caricatures from the older Disney shorts and cartoon strips, once you scratch the surface, it gets really ugly. Really fast. It only seems to be in the last few years that Disney seems to be doing a bit of PR to try and make it better, but even so they've been failing. Whereas in Encanto we have a beautiful multi-ethnic Latino family with a story of overcoming generational trauma that centers strong female characters without some kind of love story with a dashing prince on a horse designed to fix all the problems that arose during the film. As Liliana Valencia said, this is the first film to show every single hair texture. And it's all within one family. Everyone deserves to see themselves represented, and they deserve to see themselves represented from an early age. The hard work, the love, the research, and the passion that went into Encanto shine through in every song, every scene, every beautiful moment. And if you still don't think representation is important, Just look at these two adorable tweets from Liliana Valencia herself. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed non-binary friends, this was my love letter to Encanto. A huge thank you to Nashiromi, who has joined under the Cappuccino tier on my Patreon. I could not have made this without you. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much for taking the time to listen and watch my video. If you did enjoy, then a like would be fab, and feel free to go ahead and subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. I also have a TikTok, you can follow me there, and if you really like me, I have a Patreon and your name could be read out at the end of video essays in the future. I've been CuppaJoey, your favourite kind of trans fat, and have a great rest of your day.